Like, he was doing things that were just badass.
That was one of the coolest moments of my life.
I was really scared, but knowing that Dan had the gun, I did have the rifle, like, we would be okay.
All right, guys, welcome to today's show. And on the show with me is Sam Kuhnert. And Sam reached out on social media, told me a little bit about his story in an email that he sent. And then I was like, man, this would be a good guy to have on the show. College baseball player, avid outdoorsman, and I can't wait to really get into this conversation. So, Sam, thanks for being here.
Hey, thank you for having me, Dan. I really appreciate this opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. Can you just start off by kind of introducing yourself, tell listeners a little bit about you and maybe some hunting and sports history?
Oh, absolutely. So I was born in Southern Illinois, very bottom of the state. So we're closer to Paducah, Kentucky, and Tennessee than we are to Chicago, so let's just get that out there right now. We do not claim Chicago. But I was born and raised without my left hand. And when I was born, everybody wondered how I would ever be able to do anything. They were like, how's he going to be able to play sports? How's he going to be able to get to do everything that all the other kids are doing? And that was a real fear for my dad, especially, who was an avid outdoorsman. And he was also, in his own right, a really, really good baseball player in high school. Played all sports, but baseball was his thing. And so when I was born, his immediate thought was, how am I going to teach my son to do any of this? He's got one hand. Like, I do all of this, and I do it with two. So how am I going to teach him? And it was a real worry for my dad. And my mom kind of, they were both in a new place. This was before technology would show you that your son was going to be born this way. And so it was a complete surprise to all of them. But my mom really lapsed on to, that I was fearfully and wonderfully made, and that I was created perfectly in God's image, that God had a plan for me. And and that was actually capped off by a local pastor coming to my hospital room and talking to my mom and my nana and my papa and my dad, and saying, I have to tell you something. God had a vision last night in my dream. He put a vision in my dream, and it was of Sam. And this is not going to hinder him. God is going to use this difference to go and empower people all over the world and all over the country. And, of course, my dad and my mom, they're small town people. So they're like, okay, this is awesome that this pastor's having this prophecy, but we live in a 3-stoplight town in Southern Illinois. But as I grew up, every year I would hear people tell me, I'd never be good enough to play at the next level, whether that was coach's pitch on into kids pitch. Into middle school, I was cut my 6th, 7th, and 8th grade year, despite having amazing tryouts, playing really well against the kids over the summer, even beating a lot of the kids who made the team. Yeah. And I didn't know why, except for that coach didn't have faith in me because of my difference. And so people wanted to put that difference as a limitation, but my family never let me use it as a limitation, never let me use it as an excuse. I figured out how to how to hold a gun. So I would hold my gun up and balance it right here off the nub, and just learned that at an early age, to the point where my dad would take me squirrel hunting. And that was honestly the first type of hunting that I did, was squirrel hunting, which for me was some of the funnest times, because, you never know what you're going to get when you pick up a squirrel. You don't know. You
don't know how much life is going to be left in that thing.
Exactly. And let me tell you, squirrels aren't as friendly as they look on these videos.
No, they're not.
People post to TikTok. But man, that was some really good times. I remember just waking up at about 4:00 and having a quick breakfast with Dad, drinking coffee out of a sock. I don't know if you're an outdoorsman, you had to done that at least once. When you run out of coffee filters, this is a life hack for all you guys watching.
Cowboy coffee, man.
Yeah, cowboy coffee. Put it in a tube sock, tie it in, boil water, and there's your coffee. It tastes awful. But it was part of the hunting experience. Even at like 4 or 5 years old, my dad's giving me coffee, which tastes terrible, but you drink it because it's part of the experience. And so we go and do that growing up. But I really fell in love with sports. You know, that was my thing. I wanted to play baseball in college. That was was a dream of mine. And every year hearing people tell me that I'd never be able to play just fueled me. You know, it didn't really kill my momentum. Instead, it just made me want to prove people wrong. And, you know, that's something I feel like everybody can take in life. Instead of letting things become obstacles or walls, let them become steps to success. You know, you need to look at every trial and tribulation that's thrown at you as a chance to grow and as a chance to rise above the situation.
Absolutely.
And so for me, I saw it as that opportunity. And so even though I was cut from the teams, I didn't stop working. So I'd go home after school, have a quick bite, and then my mom would take me to go work out with the local college baseball coach. After the first session, he said, "Why are they cutting you?" And that's when that confidence was kind of instilled in me. Okay, I'm on the right path. I need to figure out how to do this. And so going on into my freshman year, have another great tryout, made the local Legion team over the summer, had a really good time pitching because, you know, of course, the one-handed kid wants to pitch. That's the one position that you need both hands for in a safe manner. I wanted to do, and a lot of that became because of my childhood when my dad would sit me on my lap and I'd watch the one-handed pitcher known as Jim Abbott, who played for the New York Yankees. And I watched him throw a no-hitter, and it kind of gave me that confidence. Okay, I can go and play. And as I get to this tryout my freshman year and I strike out everybody, you know, I'm thinking, all right, this is my chance to not only make this team, but I feel like coach has got to start me. And so I make the team. I look on the list. I see my name for the first time ever. It's on that list. And I was pumped, you know,
That's
thinking,
awesome.
Here's my opportunity to shine. Right. We played probably 30 games freshman year and I pitched in 3. And in that first game, I'll never forget it. It's a day that will stick with me forever just because of the power in the situation. You know, I had been working for this opportunity and finally it comes. We're playing against a team called Nashville Hornets. They're the corn-fed farm boys that, you know, hop out the bus, just got off the field, just got out of the tractor, hop off the bus with a dip in their lip and look like they can hit the ball a country mile. You know, the boys that nobody wants to face, right? Yep. And they had beat the tar out of us the past 2 years. Like, I think the year before I made the team, they beat the team by 15 runs. Just absolutely, you know, can smash a baseball. And so we're getting ready, you know, doing our stretches, and coach comes up to tell us who's starting. He goes, "Kuhnert, you're starting today." So, all right, let's go. You know, I'm pumped about this. I go out and I start warming up, and I overhear the coach talking to the other assistant coach as I'm warming up, and I hear him say, "Well, we might as well start Kuhnert. We're going to lose anyway." And immediately, you know, it was that time where someone tells you what you can do or tries to put a limit or perception on what you're capable of, and you know, the only person who can truly decide what that is you and God. And I was like, well, I know that I've been working for this. You know, I know that I'm prepared for this. So rather than having a fear of the batter stepping in the box, I kind of had a little bit of a cockiness and swagger. Like, I can't believe this person's stepping into the box to face me, you know, kind of deal. And in the first inning, my team gave me 1 run. And then that was it. That was all I got to work with for the entire game, was 1 run in the first inning. And I ended up shutting down that team for the first time in school history. We shut them out.
Oh, man, that's awesome.
You know, so I beat them, and I was thinking, all right, I showed coach, right? We played 2 other teams that year that had done the same, you know, had beaten us previous years and beaten us like a drum. And I beat both of them. Same scenario, 1-0. We had 1 run to work with my entire freshman year. Coming into my sophomore year was some of the similar situation, you know, just put them against the teams that were guaranteed to get beat by, and I beat them. And it was amazing opportunities, you know, to play against these teams, but that was it. I just got those teams, you know, whereas every other pitcher was throwing 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 games. I was throwing 2 or 3.
Yeah.
And it really stuck with me, but it made me want to work even harder. It made me want to really show that I could do it. And so coming into my junior year, I'm throwing the ball really well. I'm throwing the ball probably, 83, 84 miles per hour, nothing super hard for a junior in high school.
That's pretty quick.
It's still decent, and I'm like, man, I'm starting to throw the ball hard. I think I can actually make my dream of playing college baseball possible, maybe not Division I, but I think I can probably play for a D2 or a D3. And so I started going up to my pitching coach, and I was like, I knew I wasn't there yet. I knew I had stuff that I had to work on. And so I was like, Coach, what do I have to do to play college baseball? And he looked at me and he said, well, Sammy, you throw the ball pretty hard, but there's not very many one-handed baseball players in college baseball. And I think you should just focus on your school because I think this is your last 4 years. And immediately, at first I was frustrated, as anybody could be, but that mentality of, okay, you're placing perceptions on me. The only person to determine that is me and God. So
yep.
I'm just going to go on and prove you wrong. Immediately he made that list of people I wanted to prove wrong. So when I signed my college letter of intent on my senior year, you had to pick people to go into your picture, right? You had to pick which coaches were there.
Yeah.
And so I had my head coach who had believed in me that senior season and given me opportunity after opportunity. I had my guidance counselor who helped me get through many instances of bullying growing up. And then I had my parents, and then I had to have that coach in there. I had to have him in there so that he forever knew that the kid who he doubted proved him wrong.
Yeah.
And so that was a great opportunity for me. But, throughout my growth, the one thing that I would attribute my spirit and just calmness to would be the outdoors. Since I was a little kid, my dad had me outside. I wasn't playing video games. We were outside. I was either helping him on the farm. He was a crop farmer, third or fourth generation crop farmer here in Southern Illinois. So soybeans, corn, the occasional wheat, but we didn't really mess with wheat that much. But there was always jobs that you had to do. You always had to work for them. And, my dad really protected me growing up from the farm. He tried to keep me away from the machines that could potentially take my right hand as well. But he gave me opportunities to not only learn farming, but learn hunting through farming, learn what animals, enjoyed, learn how to really disguise yourself in the woods to the point where, I hunted in deer stands mostly, but as I got older, I started hunting on the ground. If you've ever hunted on the ground, you realize how much more challenging that is than in a deer stand. And especially for movement. For me, I'm a guy who has ADHD, so I like to move, and it gave me opportunities to really calm myself, which I really found actually transferred into sport, to find those opportunities when, things weren't going right, to calm yourself and just kind of picture yourself back in the woods.
That's awesome, man. That's so sweet. And I love to hear the stories of people not being discouraged by, limitations other people put on them, but just to take it and be like, hey, I'm going to prove you wrong. Everybody loves a good underdog story, and you've got a pretty good one, man.
It's good, man. And I'll tell you, that the underdog mentality is something everybody can benefit from. There's too much entitlement in today's world. There's too much people who think, they've earned it without working for it. And, the underdog, when you're placed as the underdog, you have to outwork everybody. You have to find a way to not just outskill, but you have to outwork, and you have to find a way for people to see that work translate onto whatever field you're putting it forth to.
Yep. So you made the college team, and then from that point, now you're running a nonprofit. Could you share kind of how you got into that, or what spurred you towards that?
Yeah, so with being the one-handed pitcher in Southern Illinois, and only thinking that it was myself and Jim Abbott, and then I actually had a freshman football coach who had the same difference as me. I thought we were the only ones on the planet. I didn't know of anything else. I had dial-up internet, so I wasn't Googling everything. But what that led to was news stories, and those news stories were more powerful than I thought they would be. One of them taking place, actually, I posted on TikTok that was like old, and I was like, oh, throwback. Ends up with like 300,000 views in 2 days, and I'm like, well, where was that in 2011? But anyway, so I had a story go not viral, but it got into other states. And this one organization called Camp No Limits reached out to me in 2010. And they're like, hey, we just saw this story on you. We think you would be amazing to come and work with our kids and teach them to play sports. We're a camp where we teach children born with limb differences and amputees to do everyday life skills that a lot of people would, find easier, than these kids are going to find. But we've really wanted to incorporate sports into the programming, and we feel like you're the person to do that. And like I said, I thought it was just myself and the two other amputees that I knew of, and that was it. And so to hear this opportunity to work with kids like me, light bulb was on. Yeah, absolutely. There was no saying no at this point. And so I was 17 at that point, and my mom takes me up to this camp. It's in Chesterfield, Missouri, which is about an hour and a half from there, which is kind of funny because my wife's actually from Chesterfield, Missouri.
Nice.
So there's like two big things that came out of Chesterfield, Missouri in this story. But as I get to Chesterfield, I get there to this camp, and they're wrapped around a fire pit, and they're talking and telling who they are and what sports they play. And I'm sitting here, I'm looking at these kids. Most of them are missing maybe an upper limb, but none of them I think one or two had lower prosthetics, but everybody else was just missing a few fingers or a hand, maybe even arm at the elbow. And I'm sitting there in this wrapped around this pit, and they're like, hi, I'm Timmy, I play soccer. Hi, I'm Jimmy, I play soccer. Hi, I'm Billy, I play soccer. And I'm listening to this, and I'm like, well, one, I'm from DuQuoin, Illinois, which is a football town. So immediately I'm thinking soccer, who wants to play that? But I've since, grown to really respect the sport of soccer. And I'm listening to these kids, though, and I'm like, what kind of challenge is soccer? Unless you're playing goalie, I don't understand how soccer is really that challenging for you, because you have both your feet. And what really bothered me was, then I thought, they only said one sport. Like, how many kids at this age are only playing one sport? That's ridiculous. They need to be exposed to as many sports as possible and subjected to all these sports so they can figure out, one, how to grow through sport, how to grow through adversity, which sports are going to produce the most adversity and the most obstacles are honestly going to benefit you the most. Yeah. And so I got to talking to a mom, and I'm like, your child looks super athletic. Why are they only being exposed to one sport? And she said, well, we just feel like if we give them the opportunity to play other sports, that they're going to fail. And we feel like here in soccer, they have the opportunity to succeed right off the bat and experience the least amount of failures. And I'm like, wait, what? Like, you're saying you don't want your kids to fail? And they're like, yeah, no, we don't want our kids to fail. And I'm like, but failure is a part of life. You have to fail in order to learn how to succeed. You have to lose in order to learn how to win. You need to look at these failures as opportunities to grow. Yeah. And I'm trying to get my sports mind into this mom, but it's one of those moms that kind of shuts everything off right off the bat. And so I knew it's time to bring in the big guns. So I was like, okay, Mama, I need you to get all of these parents out of my hair for 2 hours. She's like, well, what do you want me to do? I was like, I don't know. You figure it out. Just get the parents away and let me work with these kids. So she does an impromptu raising a limb different athlete little forum with the parents. And while she's doing that, I worked on the kids, how to throw and catch a baseball, how to do a glove transfer. So where they throw the ball and get their hand back in the gloves quick enough to be able to make a play, and how to hit a baseball, how to throw and catch a football, how to dribble and shoot a basketball, and how to swing a golf club, which honestly, I don't swing a golf club very good. It goes far, just doesn't go far straight. But got to talking with these kids, and just, they were all wanted this opportunity. They all wanted the opportunity to play these sports, but they were being held back out of fear of failure. And it wasn't sitting well with me. And so we
Oh.
went back to our cabins. My mom stayed at a hotel. I stayed in this cabin that had no air conditioning. It was probably 115 degrees inside there. It was like a sweatbox sauna. And I remember sitting on this bed and just constantly hearing this voice. And I know that people, they talk about hearing God, and a lot of people say, no, you can't really hear God. He doesn't talk out loud. But I hear it audibly. I hear it in my head, and it keeps repeating the same thing. You can change this. You can change this. And I started thinking, what can I do? I'm a 17-year-old, get degrees, kid in high school. My plan is, what party am I going to next week? How am I going to get to this college baseball? I don't have time to do anything to change this, but I keep hearing this voice. You can change this, all night long, to the point where I can't sleep.
Damn.
And I have a baseball game the next day that we have to drive an hour and a half for. So I'm like, what is going on? Finally, after about, I'd say 30 minutes of sleep, my mom comes and wakes me up, gets me out in the car, and we're driving back home. And I asked my mom, I said, why are parents holding their kids back? She said, well, parents don't like to see their kids fail. I was like, but Mom, they have to. She's like, you're right, they do. She's like, but some parents aren't like your parents. They don't push their kids to get into everything and to try everything. My dad literally picked me up and threw me in the deep end, said, drown or swim.
Yep.
Your choice. Here's the ladder, there's the stairs. And I swam. I swam just fine because I had one idea. Of course he was going to jump in if I was struggling, but just that thought that my dad had the faith in me to swim, he threw me out there. And to see that other kids weren't getting that, it really bothered me. And all of a sudden, this vision pops in my head of a camp where these kids come. It's a sports camp, and they learn sports from coaches who look like them. So limb different athletes to coach them. So it gives them a mentor who looks like them, who's been where they've been, and also has the knowledge of what they've learned in their experience to now provide these kids with steps above where they were. And I brought that vision to my mom, and I'm pretty sure her jaw dropped. She's like, where did that come from? So I really don't know, but it sounds like a really good idea. And she's like, Sam, that is an amazing idea. She's like, I would have driven across the country on a $10 bill to get you to a U. And that's when it hit us. And so we start coming up with a name for the nonprofit. We start looking at, what brings power over pity to these kids. We don't want people to pity them. We don't want people to feel sorry for them. We want them to feel powerful in the name. And so growing up, I always called my left limb my nub. It was always my nub. And everybody would always say that I had a disability growing up. And it would piss me off. That was the worst thing you could possibly tell me, was that I had a disability. Because if you look up the term disability in the dictionary, it's like lame, limp, unable to do for yourself, unable to think for yourself, which did not define me. It did not define any of the kids that we serve. And so I was like, well, what's the opposite of disability? Ability. So I was like, okay, nub ability. Start the t-shirts. Let's go. That's the name. And then I had to find coaches. So I start Googling and start looking up, okay, who has college experience and is limb different out there right now in mainstream sports, so that we get these kids out there competing against everybody else, but they get the opportunity to learn for the very first time from coaches like them. I found a softball player named Hayden Filson out of Metamora, Illinois. It's like, well, what's the chance that it's actually in Illinois? That's amazing. Here we've got one. Then I reached out to a University of New York, Albany football player at the time, which is a D1. I think they're in the FCS, so the championship series rather than the bowl series. And he's a defensive end, and his name's Eddie Delaney. Boom, we've got a football coach. Now we've got a softball coach. I can coach baseball. So now we've got 3 sports. Well, let's see what other sports we can do. And so I started looking and finding all of these coaches, to the point where I ended up with 7 coaches coming to our first camp. I played college baseball at Greenville College, which is now Greenville University in Illinois. And I went to my college and said, I would really like to hold a camp. And they said, well, we're happy to hold it here. And so we ended
Dang.
up with a camp there that year with 7 coaches and 19 different kids coming from all over. And I thought, man, this is an amazing opportunity, especially through what had happened in the fall of 2011 to my health. And so it was really amazing just to be there. But then to see so many people latch on to this vision of Nubability, I was like, well, this is definitely what I'm supposed to do with my life. This is definitely what God has put me on earth to do. Little did I know that, tell God your plans and you want to hear him laugh. And I had planned on one camp. That was kind of the Sam vision of Nubability. God's vision was much bigger.
Yeah, man, that is so cool. So you start hosting these camps, the college hosts or at the college. And then it sounds like from there, it just kind of took off. Like you said, God's vision of it was totally different than yours, and his always wins, no matter what we do to ruin it always wins. So what happened from there? I mean, now you're in multiple states, right?
Yeah, so now we've held camps and clinics in 10 different states. We're looking at getting 11 and 12 this year, and then potentially adding more in the coming year. We're going to do a fishing clinic in Myrtle Beach, North Carolina. I want to say South Carolina, North Carolina. And then we're also doing a basketball clinic in Westchester, Pennsylvania. And so we are working through over 20 different sports now instead of 7. We have served probably over 700 kids with limb differences. But what's crazy, and this is where it just blows my mind to me. Since the inception of Nubability, we have served kids from 49 states and 11 countries.
Jeez.
And the majority of those kids served actually came to my hometown of DuQuoin. We took the camp from my college town, which was about the same. It's probably, I think, 8,000-9,000 if you didn't include the college people living in that town. And in my hometown, they say we have 6,500 people. I've never seen that many people in my hometown. I think we count our cats and dogs in the population personally, but to see people willing to travel an hour and a half for this camp, to the point where that summer camp that I was telling you about has grown to where in 2019, before COVID, we had 189 limb different kids from 48 countries and 48 states and 5 countries come to DuQuoin, Illinois.
Oh my goodness.
For that camp. I mean, that to me was just mind blowing, that not only did we attract people from other states to come here to small town USA, but we attracted other countries with what we were offering. My coaching staff has grown to over 100 people in my coaching pool. We have, I think this year at our camp, because of COVID numbers and just like where we were kind of budget cutting and trying to figure out how to make the camp happen without taking away the quality, we still had, after a year of lockdowns, we had 120 kids come to our camp this year to be coached by 60 accomplished limb different athletes as their coaches. And so it has grown exponentially, man. We're before COVID, we were projected at 200. After that camp, we were projected to grow to over 200 to 220 kids, which would have been amazing, and would have been the last straw for our high school size to be able to host us. And then, so who knows what God has planned next, but we look for every opportunity we can. And that's why, when this lockdown happened, what I was telling you earlier is we looked to the outdoors to try and space it out, because we're hitting all the sports.
Yep. But
there's kids still sitting on their couch playing games or something because they don't know that there's more to life. And we want to be able to show them those opportunities that the outdoors can offer, because you can learn a lot from the outdoors. The outdoors can teach you resilience. It can teach you patience. And like I told you earlier, it can teach you calm, which is something that someone with ADHD needs is calm.
Well, and what a perfect time for that too, because kids who are used to being out playing sports, hanging out with their friends, and then all of a sudden 2020 happens and everything shuts down. They're not able to go to their friend's house, they're not able to go to school, they're not able to play sports. What's the one thing still open? The outdoors. Exactly. And
And that's something, when COVID first happened, which was, I think it was 2020, we had our all sport camp scheduled. We had everything ready to go. And then state shuts down and we're unable to hold that camp. And for me, it wasn't a failure, but it felt like a failure. It felt like a huge failure that we were unable to pull this off, that we didn't find a way to come up with how to hold this camp during this pandemic. And I started seeing deterioration of what we have done for kids growing up. Most of our kids, we probably kept 85 to 90% attendance rate from that first year all the way through, and work with kids aged 4 to 17. So to be able to keep that attendance rate was, impressive. But when we had to cancel that camp, I sat down with my business director. I was like, look, we have to find a way to pull these off in this pandemic. I don't know how we do it, but we have to find a way to pull these off for these kids. And so we come up with this 14-page COVID mitigation plan. And then we also came up with, okay, where are they saying it is safe? Outside.
Yeah.
So we're going to hold all of our camps and clinics in 2020 outside. And we did. Every sport, whether it was a mainstream sport or an outdoor sport, it was held outside. And we were able to hold our very first fishing clinic, and it was a success. Everybody caught fish. We did it out in Clearwater, Florida. Now this year they're dealing with red tide, which, that's terrible. So we're moving that for this year to this new location in Myrtle Beach. And then we're hoping to add more outdoor opportunities, like I said earlier, with a deer hunt, a turkey hunt, a waterfowl hunt, potentially an Arkansas hog hunt. We're working on those details, and then hoping to just watch it grow and watch these kids just become infatuated with the outdoors, because it is infatuating.
Yeah, man, that is so cool. I tell people all the time, like, no matter how many walls people have up, no matter how shut down they are to other people, there's a few things that get them to open up. And in my mind, those are sports and the outdoors. And so the fact that you're doing that, and you're teaching, you're teaching people who may, like you, have been told they can't do something their whole life. And now you're empowering them and showing them it's totally possible through, one, your testimony and the testimony of these other 100 athletes that have done the same thing. And then, to incorporate the outdoors into it, that side of it, I'm like, man, if you go outside, if you're a hunter or a fisherman and you don't believe in God, like, exactly, you must be blindfolded while you're out there. You know what I mean? Like, exactly. The outdoors it just screams creation. And like, there's nothing like it. I love getting people out. I try to take new people out every year, and I try to set a goal of like 20 new people. And it may not be people who have never hunted before, but I just want to connect with new people through hunting. And so I try to get out and do that. But what, do you have stuff there in your home state that you're going to be able to do outdoor activities, or like locations, I guess, in your home state?
So back in 2014, when I started Nubability Outdoors, we started it off as just at our camp. So the way our camps ran like a college style camp. So every kid chooses their focus sport, and then they have open sports sessions throughout the camp, and they'll run from around 9 a.m. in the morning till about 7, 8 o'clock at night. And there's constant sessions of rotating through your sport. Your focus sport is the one you want to learn the most from. It's the one that you're really struggling with, or you really just want to focus on. And so they get, I think it's about 6 to 8 hours of one-on-one practice time with our coaches, and learning drills and sessions and different things to get better at. The Thursday of our camp is known as our Outdoors Day. At our Outdoors Day, kids are exposed to fishing, archery, golf, water skiing and wakeboarding, and swimming and tennis. And with our archery, we have watched as archery and fishing has drawn more and more and more kids each year, to the point where, okay, we need to find ways to grow this. Yeah. And so we actually went in 2014 and held our very first standalone outdoors clinic, which was a 3-gun clinic in Covington, Georgia. If you ever get a chance, look up Hunter Kale, the no-handed shooter.
Okay.
It will blow your mind. So he was our head shooting coach at that time. And he has no hand on his left. And I think he has just a trigger finger on his right. And he was number one in the nation at one time for 3-gun against everybody else. And it was his shooting it's amazing. And so he got us this opportunity to come down where he was in Covington and hold this camp. And we saw kids flock. And what was really cool about the kids that flocked towards this outdoor sport was probably half of them had experience before that. The rest were wanting to come for this opportunity to learn from a limb different person how to do it.
Yeah.
And so seeing that made me realize, okay, we need to try and figure out ways to offer up different hunts and stuff throughout the years. And so growing from there, we offered one hunt a year. We had a waterfowl and a deer hunt, a waterfowl and a deer hunt. As with hunting, you don't always harvest an animal. And so we were fortunate that our kids actually harvested a deer and a duck each time that we had these hunts. And so now as we are experiencing more and more growth, I would like to get it where we're holding a sports camp and an outdoors clinic every month. If I could do that, where I could get that many opportunities, think of how many kids that serve, even if it's only 20 kids in the sports and maybe 5 to 10 in the outdoors. That's still a lot of kids when it's all said and done. That's over 100 in the outdoors, and I'm not very good at math, but over 200 in the sports world, which would grow our reach, which would allow us to serve more kids. Because for me, it's all about fulfilling a promise. I made a promise to God in 2011 when he gave me a second chance at life. I was told when I was in college after finishing my fall season, I got really sick. I spent 2 weeks in the hospital. In those 2 weeks, I lost 40 pounds. My organs were starting to fail. I was jaundiced the color of mustard. I wasn't living best life that I should be. I'd become very egotistical. I had become more about it was me who did everything. I wasn't really caring about the compassion or anything of others. I was looking out for me. And when I got sick, it allowed me to evaluate my life at a bigger role, because now I have doctors telling me that I'll be dead in a few weeks to a few months. And so when you look at your life and you don't see a proud person there, you don't see yourself actually getting into heaven, which is something that as a kid you were raised, you want to go there. That's where you want to be. And to sit there and look and say, will you get in heaven right now? And say, well, I don't know. It really makes you evaluate that life. And so at that time, I started messaging everybody who I'd ever done wrong to and asking for forgiveness. And then I realized that there was an opportunity there for me to talk to God. And I hadn't done that in a while. Despite going to a Christian college, I hadn't done that. And so I sat there and I said, God, thank you for this life you've given me, for every opportunity that you've shown, for the family that you've given me to raise me. I know I've failed you. I know I haven't been living the life that I want to. And I understand that. And I ask for your forgiveness. And if it's my time to go, I want to go with you. But if you give me a second chance, I promise to live this life to serve others and to serve you. And so the next day I wake up and my test results are terrible. Everything's failing. And that night, there was what's called corporate prayer, which is where multiple churches come together and pray at the exact same time for the exact same reason. And it was really humbling, because my college actually brought forth all the students together in a student prayer chain, and they all prayed. And that night, what was crazy was people came back to God who hadn't known him through this, through what was happening. And, at that point, Nubability was just an idea. It wasn't a full camp. And so as all these people came to pray, then they expanded into their churches, and then their churches expanded to other churches and other churches, to the point where I was on the prayer chain in nearly every state in the United States and outside the country, where people were praying for me, which was incredibly humbling. And then the next day I wake up And after 2 weeks of not be able to hold myself up, pick myself up to go to the bathroom or anything, and running 105 to 106 degree fevers with hallucinations, to be able to wake up and feel normal. I mean, I felt normal. My jaundice skin was pink. I had no temperature. I was able to stand up and use the restroom. I was able to hold full conversations knowing what I had talked about. Everything was normal in my eyes. And so then the doctor comes in, he's like, what's happened?
Yeah.
And so they start, just poking and prodding me like I'm Texas barbecue, trying to figure out, how did he get better? And the doctor comes back in and sits down probably around 3:30. He's like, we got to send you home. I was like, what? He's like, yeah, we got to send you home. He's like, I'm not much of a believer. He said, but this is a miracle. He's like, we don't know what has changed. We don't know how your diagnosis has changed, how you're getting better, other than this is a miracle.
Jeez.
And I remember making that promise to God, and I immediately knew, okay, my dad always told me growing up, when you give somebody your word, you keep it.
Yep.
And so that's what I'm doing. I mean, I feel like he, that vision of Nubability was what he wanted. And so that's when I moved forward with the first camp in 2012. And then from there on, now it's God's vision, and now it's just going where we go.
Yep. Man, that is so cool. What a cool testimony to share, and just a cool story. And I'm excited to see where it takes you. I mean, God's obviously got big plans for you, and just the way that your heart to serve other people and impact them. And we'll have to connect off air, and I may have a couple connections for you to reach out to people in Colorado, here in Missouri. I've worked at a couple different camps that are either sports or outdoor camps. One of them was both, but maybe there's some cool crossover where you can make some connections those places. Is there anybody else in the country, any other camps that you know of in the country that are doing anything like this?
No. So that's what's crazy about Nubability. Whenever we did it the first time, and we looked up, kind of different camps to say, are we going to be competing with anybody? Nobody else is doing it. To this day, there's people who focus on Paralympics and other like track and field sports and other sports that are kind of more generated towards only competing against slim different people. Yeah. But what we do is get them to compete against everybody else. Yeah. We're giving them the life, because they're going to compete against everybody else in every aspect of their life, whether it's for getting a job or in sport, that's not going to be just slim different people. And so looking it up even today, we're the only one in the world, not the country, the world. And so we are, and what's really cool is in the last year, and I feel like this was truly God, I've had other countries reaching out, wanting to shadow, wanting to learn how we've done things and how they can do it. And I'm like, this is what it was for. This is the opportunity to not only grow our reach, but to grow the mission and grow the vision to serve more kids. That's what it's about for us. A lot of people think, nonprofit, that's where you're just supposed to make a bunch of money and then, generate it out there. And it's like, no, nonprofit, if you're doing it correctly, it's providing the most experiences for however much money you have, and then finding ways to rebuild that funding every year. Yeah. And so for us, it's just how many opportunities can we have for these kids? How, our goal is to get international. Our goal is to go into countries like, I had the opportunity my freshman year to actually pitch in the Dominican Republic. And I'll never forget that to this day, because I remember it's a religion down there. I mean, baseball is a religion down there. It's one of the coolest things. If you ever get the opportunity, you got to go to a professional Dominican game. It is a cultural experience like no other. But we're playing in this field, and it's in this little neighborhood, but we're playing against professional athletes and on this field. And a coach calls me and goes, "Hey, go warm up." At this time, the stands are just packed full. Like, you can't everybody's standing around the fences, all the bleachers are done, and it's just a loud game the entire time. Like, it's not quiet like in the US where they just cheer for yay or no. Like, they're talking the entire time. And so I head out to the bullpen and I start warming up with my catcher, and I start to throw and, getting the loud pops, which makes you feel good as a pitcher. So I'm like, all right, I'm feeling pretty good right now. And all of a sudden I throw one and my catcher's eyes just get beaming big. And I'm like, what's going on? And he goes like that with his glove. And I was like, I look behind, like I start glancing around the stadium and there's nobody in the seats. And I'm like, where is everybody at? And I turn around and there they all are. They're just watching me warm up because they had never seen anybody with a limb difference get an opportunity to play sports where they were. And so I warm up, I get sent out to the mound. All of a sudden the stadium refills. Everybody's there again, just watching as I throw the last few warm-up pitches, and I get in, strike out the first guy. They start, chatting, like knocking each other with their elbow, Then I strike out the second guy. Then I start ramping up a little bit. Then I strike out the side to end the game, and they rush the field. They rush the field. I'm like, what is going on? They start taking my hat and start trying to rip my jersey off. And I'm like, what in the world is going on? And my translator comes up to me. He's like, do you realize what you've done? I said, no, I hope I didn't offend anybody. I know they're trying to take my clothes. He's like, these people have never seen someone who looks like you go out there and not only play, but to beat their pros, to beat their loves, Yeah. And he's like, I want to tell you about this orphanage where all these kids are born with different differences. And I want to see if I can talk your coach into coming with you guys to this orphanage. I'm like, yeah, let me talk to coach. And I talked to him and he's like, yeah, absolutely. And we get there and there's all these kids with different differences, whether it's wheelchair or limb difference. And I got to talking to one of the heads of that orphanage. I said, why is there so many kids here? What's going on? And she said, well, here it's seen as a curse if you have a difference. And if you're born different, you have the opportunity to either be shunned and cast out and not allowed to even, shop in the grocery store or do everything that a normal person would do. Or you can hide them or give them up for adoption. She said, usually people choose adoption. And for me, it was like, wow, how much of a blessing, one, to be born in the United States of America, where I have the opportunity to go out and compete with everyone else.
Yeah.
But for these kids, they don't even get the opportunity to be a kid. And so what I would love to do is go down to the Dominican Republic for 2 weeks, work with kids at the orphanage and other orphanages throughout the Dominican, coach them up, and then scrimmage against all the different little league teams around and hopefully beat some. I'm a very competitive guy, hopefully beat some, but just to earn that respect and to start trying to change that culture. And what's crazy is I thought that culture was only in the Dominican. What I've since learned is it's all over the world. Yeah. And that there's opportunities everywhere to help these kids to reach the sport that their country is known for and find the opportunity to go out and compete. And so that's the goal, man, to get out there and serve as many kids with whatever breath God's given me. At this point, I know that life's not permanent, but eternal life is, eternal life with Christ. And so that's what I'm living for. I don't live about today's worldly issues or anything like that. To me, it's for God, and that's it.
Man, this has been so cool to chat with you. And I think it's a divine appointment for sure. Cause I've got connections that as you're talking, I'm just like, man, I've got to send him this guy's number. I got to connect him with this person or that person, because I've been blessed to work with a lot of international organizations. I've been blessed to go on missions trips to multiple countries. My sister and her husband, they actually go to Israel every year, and they have a baseball ministry, I guess, if you want to call it that. I don't think they can actually label it as that, but basically they try to get people from all religions to come on the same team and be unified and play baseball together. But
Absolutely.
I mean, as far as baseball in different countries goes, hopefully I can connect you with some cool people, and I'm sure you've got plenty of connections yourself. I want to hear a little bit now about what you have coming up in the outdoors, because I don't know if Illinois is the same as here, but we're about to kick off on a lot of different hunting seasons.
Yeah. So right now we're in squirrel season, which I mean, a lot of people don't really even look at that as a season. It's just, all right, time to go kill squirrels and make some good squirrel dumplings. I don't know if you ever had squirrel dumplings, but squirrel dumplings is the
I haven't done dumplings. My wife, that's like the one thing that she's just like, this is so weird that we're eating squirrel. Like, she's got on board with duck and goose. She loves pheasant, obviously loves like venison and elk and moose and all that, but the squirrel, for some reason, it weirds her out, man.
Well, in her defense, a squirrel, I mean, and any hunter will tell you this, and I know you know this, a squirrel's a tree rat.
Yeah.
When you skin a squirrel, you've got a rat. I mean,
100%. Yeah.
And so I understand your wife's hesitancy. I mean, I went to this place in Colorado. It was on our honeymoon, because we originally planned to go to Thailand for our honeymoon. We got married back in 2020, right before the shutdowns. And then all of a sudden, all of the airports were shut down to go out of country travel, which honestly, I didn't really want to travel out of the country.
Not at that point. No.
At that point. But we went to Colorado, and we went to this place. It was called Down the Rabbit Hole in Colorado, and it was all wild game. It was a wild game restaurant, which was really, really cool. And so got the opportunity to experience different wild game, and they did this squirrel lettuce wrap, like Asian style squirrel. And I was like, I've had squirrel. I don't know how you guys did this. It was one of the best things I've ever put in my mouth.
We've been trying to experiment with more stuff. Growing up, like we hunted. I hunted my whole life, and my parents, I mean, they weren't like into hunting everything. They were mainly rifle deer hunters. Like 9 days a year, they were in the stand, and that was about it. And so our venison backstraps were cut into medallions, fried on a pan until they were way past well done, and we would dip them in ketchup, and that's how we ate venison backstraps growing up. And so I was not like, I had no experience with actually like well cooked food. It was just
right.
It's meat, we got to eat it. And so now that we're getting into that stuff, I'm like, people send me recipes all the time, and I'm like, yep, trying that.
Well, there's two guys who I follow. One's the Meat Eater. The meateater.com has the best out. Like he had, I don't usually do a lot with the deer stew meat, but this year I saw a recipe for Southern Brunswick stew, New Brunswick stew by the deer hunter. And I did that one, and I did it with my homemade barbecue sauce, because you use barbecue sauce in the recipe. It was one of the best stews I ever had. I was like, okay, we're going to learn from this guy. And so then I started doing some duck recipes. Like I did a duck schnitzel, which is like a duck with like a pepper mushroom, garden pepper mushroom sauce that they put on top of the duck, and they cook the duck to medium rare, but it's also lightly fried. And it was like heaven. I'm like, okay, this guy knows where it's at.
They do. We've got their cookbooks now, and I'm telling you, those recipes, we haven't found one that's bad. Not a single one.
No, it's unreal. It's unreal. And to see kind of like his cooking background, where he basically just taught himself through hunting. And it's because he's like, I feel like that I'm wasting a lot of different parts of animals because I don't know what to do with them. So he's went and studied and seen like how every meat breaks down, how every organ, does. Like he did. My little brother did some kind of heart off of his website, Deer Heart, and that was really good. And it's not
deer heart is so good. I've never kept a deer heart in my life until I started watching their stuff and listening to their stuff. And I remember I was out in Colorado. My buddy had just shot a moose, and we got it back to camp, and we cooked up moose heart and moose tongue. Unbelievable. Both of them were so good. I'm like, all right, from now on, I'm saving them every time.
Exactly. I mean, it makes you think how much meat have we wasted growing up? Like whenever you
yeah.
watch this stuff, like how many times did I just throw the stew meat from the deer away
Yeah.
and stuff, just because you had to cut around so many different ligaments and everything to get to it, and it's crazy.
It's all, I think a lot of people don't realize it's all good to eat if it's done right. There
Exactly.
might be a few parts that you're like, no, I don't want to ever mess with that. But for the most part, if you just cook it right, if you take the time to prepare it, and even like in the processing of it, I remember we were just up in Alaska, me and a couple of guys, and we were fishing, and the guide that took us out fishing, he's like, hey, listen, now this is what I'm going to do. He's like, I'm going to fillet all these fish, and I want you to like rinse them off and just make sure all the slime's gone. Well, I'm very particular with the meat. Like when I handle meat, it's like clean, like it doesn't touch a dirty surface. I don't leave any hair on it, don't leave any slime on it, don't leave any blood on it. And he just looked at me, he's like, dude, that's awesome. And I was like, what's awesome? He's like, you're actually taking care of the meat. He's like, I'm telling you right now, out of all the people I've had on the boat, those fish are going to taste better than any of the other fish those guys brought home because you took care of the meat right away. And I was like, okay, cool. And I will say it's been amazing. We just had some last night and it was phenomenal.
Oh man. Now what kind of fish were you catching out there? Just trout or?
No, so we caught 4 different types of salmon, lingcod, halibut, rockfish, and yellow eye.
Oh man.
Yeah, so a little bit of everything. And he was telling me about random stuff like yellow eye collars. He's like, that's the best thing you'll eat in the ocean. And it's like the pectoral fins,
Mm-hmm.
and then around like underneath the gill, basically you cut like where it makes that V underneath. You just
Right.
take, it's the collar of the fish, and you take that off and you cook that up and eat it. And I was like, I've never eaten a collar of a fish before, and it was good. I mean, it was
Oh,
really
wow.
good. Yeah,
That's impressive. That's cool. That's cool. I love opportunities like that. And that's what, like when I was a kid, we would catch the fish and we would fry it up that night. We didn't
Yep.
wait. It was sometimes if you didn't get a good haul, then you'd wait. But most of the time we wouldn't wait. We just fry it up that night. And there's nothing better than fresh meat, fresh
Oh,
food.
man.
Which one of my buddies actually killed a deer. Butchered it, took out the backstrap and cooked the backstrap within, say, it probably took him 2 hours to get the deer fully cleaned up. And he cooked it down within an hour of that. And he said it was some of the freshest, tasty. He said it was like, he's like, I don't even know how to describe it. He's like, but I'm going to try and do this every time. I'm like, well, just don't cook all your backstrap next time. You cooked way too much. But I mean, he said it was one of the most tender meats he ever did because it was just so fresh.
Yeah. I mean, I don't do this often, but we've done it to where we're butchering a deer and you'll just shave like a little chunk of meat off and pop it in your mouth as you're butchering, totally raw.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't recommend that to anybody, but I mean,
there's
always the risk of, coming down with something, but I mean, I've never had any issues with it.
Well, that's like, so we had cattle when I was growing up, and my dad sometimes with just hamburger would take like the raw hamburger from the cow that we had just done and just take it and put it on a cracker with some salt and pepper and pop it in his mouth. Yeah. I mean, that was a little snack. I mean, we did that a few times growing up, and I was like, I never got sick, never got worms that I know of or anything like that. But I do feel like there's a lot of that today, like where a lot of people just afraid of raw meat, and I don't feel like it's something you should be afraid of. I feel like
no, I mean, there's definite, like any predatory animals, you definitely have to look out for some of the stuff that they can carry. But for the most part, I don't care if you can walk my venison backstrap past the fire and slap it on my plate and I'm good,
Exactly.
Like I'll eat venison anyway it's cooked, but yeah, I think people are just kind of scared off by it when they don't always need to be.
Exactly.
What's your favorite outdoor activity?
By far hunting. I love duck hunting the most.
Okay.
I don't know why I love duck hunting the most, other than I just really enjoy it. Like I could sit in a duck blind, not see a duck, and just be happy as a lark.
Yeah.
That's just kind of me. But I also love the challenge because whereas with deer hunting, it's more, with the gun, it's more of stability because we still hunt with slug guns here.
Yep.
But for duck hunting, I have to be able to, move with it. So it's like a little bit more of a challenge. And I think that's why I like it more, is just because of the challenge as the ducks fly in to not only balance the gun up on here, but to have enough strength to be able to hold through and get multiple shots off. And so,
Oh yeah.
But I love duck hunting. And my wife loves duck hunting and loves hunting too, which is, I've kind of lucked out on that one.
Yeah, no kidding.
But I remember she's like, she goes to a duck club in Missouri with her dad growing up, and they had their duck dogs, and my dogs have always been family. I've never been able to train them to be a duck dog only. And so I remember I was like, hey, you want to go duck hunting with me? She's like, yeah. And we get out there. She's like, well, where's the duck dog? I said, I'm your duck dog. Like, you shoot him, I'll go get him.
You married into it.
Yeah. But no, I've always loved duck hunting. But I'll tell you one hunt that I want to do again before my life's over is go black bear hunting in Wyoming. I did that when I was in 7th grade and had an amazing experience with my dad. My dad, he does a father-son hunt with each of his kids before they get into high school, because high school is all about football, like I said,
Yeah.
So you have football workouts all summer and everything else. And so he took me to Wyoming to go black bear hunting, and I went out with an old man. He was probably 86 at the time, and now he's probably 96 or whatever, waking up at 4:30 in the morning to get all of his chores on the farm done before we'd go out every morning. He just impressed me. His will to get up early, get everything done, and then still go take you hunting. So we get up every morning. His wife would cook us an amazing breakfast from either their cattle or their hens out there. They had everything. And then we go walk up the mountain, up the trails to the different spots. And I remember the first day we're hunting and we don't see anything. And so we go to check this last spot before the hours are up. And I'm laying down there, and they bait. They do different baiting, and they were trying to bait some wolves in that had killed some cattle, and so they hung some cattle from a tree branch. And I'll never forget this image for the rest of my life. As we're crawling up to like get a viewpoint of this, you see 2 baby cubs swinging from the cattle on the tree branch, just swinging back and forth. It was just one of the coolest things I ever seen. But then all of a sudden, I'm like, oh crap, there's 2 baby cubs here. I'm like, mama bear. And the guy goes, okay, we're gonna be real quiet and we're just gonna back out of here. And so we did. We went back, and then the next day we came back to that same spot. And the way it was is the spot kind of sits on a bluff, and you have to crawl up this slope in order to get to a viewpoint of the spot. Now, whenever you get up that slope, then you're only about 20 yards from the spot, which, if you're in front of anything with, that big that can be, about as close as you want to be.
Yeah.
And so I'm crawling up this bluff, and all of a sudden the guide says, stop. I'm like, okay, what's going on? All of a sudden I just started hearing, oh. And he's like, and I look up, and there's the biggest bear I've ever seen out in the wild, other than when I went to Alaska with my parents for my brother's hunt. And I'm just like, oh crap. And I'm looking, and I don't have a clear shot. I can't, I've got to go closer to get an opportunity at this shot. And so I start going up the slope, and all of a sudden I see him come up. He's still behind a lot of tree, but he comes up and he's standing over top the bluff, and he's looking right at me. And I'm like, oh God. And so I wait until he turns and I start to crawl again. And then I snapped a tree limb right in front of, like right behind me. He stood up and he looked at me, and my guide's eyes got big and my dad's eyes got big. And I was wondering if I crapped my pants. and all of a sudden, like, it was just the biggest bear I've seen. And he goes up, he goes back down on all fours, and he walks away, and we never saw him again. And the guy looks at me and goes, that was Wyoming's record bear right there. That was Wyoming's record.
Oh my goodness.
He said, by far, that beats it by a lot. And I was like, it was one of those things like, you've had freeze up at one point in time on deer or something, it happens. But this thing, my entire body froze. And I was like to the point where the guide's like, okay, we got to go check the other spot. Like, hang on. I got to gather myself here. And so then we went up to this other spot, and we have about 30 minutes till dark. I'm about, I think, 175 yards from the bait barrel. And all of a sudden, with about 25 minutes left, these crows start just, dispersing out of the woods. And the guide looks at me and goes, that's a good sign. He said, get ready. I said, okay. So I get ready, and all of a sudden this black bear that probably stood about, 6'5", about, not huge, but a good sized bear, starts making his way down the hill. And I've got about, by the time he gets down to the bait barrel, I've got about 10 minutes. And so I line up my shot, and boom, dropped him right on the spot. First time I ever shot this gun other than at home, and dropped it on the spot. And I just remember, one, I was very impatient. So as soon as I shot him and I saw him drop, I take off sprinting down this slope, and then the guy's like, whoa, we don't know he's down, whoa. But I remember just going up there and just feeling the heartbeat and the adrenaline and everything. I just wanted to get there right there, and we get up there, and I see the bear, and it's a beautiful bear. It had like more of a dark brown coat than the black coat, and just a good sized bear. And it was an amazing trip with my dad. And I'll tell you, one of the funniest things about that type of hunting is the patience is different than like if patience for a deer.
Oh,
because my guide would literally go and take off and sleep for a little bit. And he'd tell us, he's like, all right, boys, you want to get a nap, now's the time. He's like, I'll let you know when we got a bear coming.
That's awesome.
But it was one of the coolest experiences, just being out there in the mountains and watching the mountains wake up. I mean, I know what it's like to watch the woods wake up. It was so cool to watch the mountains wake up, and you see mule deer and elk and different things just like come out, and different than like a deer. Deer are super cautious as they move, and these are just like moving like, nobody's gonna mess with me. And it was just a really, really cool experience that I would love to experience again. But I also want to get out to Maine and black bear hunt. That's the East
Coast has so many bears. I didn't realize it, but like New Jersey of all places has loads of black bears.
That's crazy. I didn't know that at all.
Yeah, there was one that was big. It was like all over the news because this bear would stand up, and I can't remember what its name was, but it would stand up and it would walk on its hind legs everywhere, like a person. And
was this the one that broke into the guy's car?
Possibly. I mean, this thing's been on the news for years, and I don't remember if someone hit it with their car or somebody actually shot it. But anyways, it was a big deal. And then I was like looking into it, and New Jersey has one of the highest bear populations per square mile.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy. I didn't know that. I know that in Maine, they're like the large, other than going up to Canada and Alaska, they're like the largest black bears in the country. Like their bears are like 600 pounds, 700 pound black bears.
Yeah, that's crazy. That's getting grizzly size almost.
Exactly. I'm like, good Lord, that's big. I mean, the one that I didn't get a shot at that almost made me crap my pants. The guide said he's probably a 450 pound bear, which was a big bear for Wyoming.
Add another 50% onto that. That's
Yeah,
wild.
exactly. That's crazy.
Well, man, we're coming up on an hour and 10 minutes. I want to respect your time. And I know I've got another podcast to get ready for and some more stuff to do around the house, but thanks a lot, man, for being on the show. And I want to give you a chance to share with listeners where they can find you, where they can connect with you on social media. Say they're listening and they have a limb difference, or their son or daughter does. How can they connect with you to try to become part of one of your camps?
Absolutely. So to connect with me personally, you just go on any social media platform. It's Sam Kuhnert, SAMKUHNERT. Just connect with me, message me. I'm not somebody who ignores messages or anything like that. I feel like God brings everybody to you for a reason, and you at very least can listen to what they're bringing. If you're limb different, come to Nubability. It's an opportunity to learn and grow through sport. It's an opportunity for your younger kids, it's an opportunity to learn for the first time from a limb different coach. I mean, you think about a little league practice, the very first practice, that coach probably has both hands and both feet. So immediately every kid is on a level playing field. That's what we're trying to do for these kids. Give them a level playing field, give them the opportunity to go out there and compete and learn and grow to be better. So go to Nubability Athletics I think it's Nubability Athletics on Instagram, and then it's Nubability on everything else. Facebook's Nubability Athletics maybe. But then our website's www.nubability.org. Like I told Dan, our mission is to serve as many children as we can with whatever life God's given us. And we do that through sport, because I feel like sport teaches you more life lessons than life.
Yeah. And then one last thing, what about your book? Because I know you came out with a book and you
did.
crushed
it. Got one here to send to you.
Oh, awesome. That'll be really sweet.
Yeah. And so I wrote this book, and it took about 2 years to write. I knew that God had more for my story than just these camps. I knew that he could use this story to go out and serve others. And so I wrote Game Changer, How to Thrive When Life Doesn't Go According to Plan. It's my life story, but there's also, I give you steps on how to become a game changer in your everyday life and learn how you can use the platform that you have to make a godly impact. So many people think that they have to be famous, that they have to have millions of followers, that they have to be professional athletes in order to make a difference. And that's not true. God can use everybody. And that's what this book's about. How God used a small town boy from 6,500 people population to go out and change the country, change other countries, to change lives, despite having such a small platform. Any platform can be used by God.
Man, that is so cool. And I love just your mission, your willingness and drive to serve other people. I'll make sure to put all of the links for your social media, for Nubability, for your book, all of that in the description of this podcast, so people can easily click and go check your stuff out. And then last but not least, here's your chance. I call this episode, or this segment of the episode, Emptying the Chamber. This is your chance to just share one last thing with the listeners before we hop off.
Absolutely. I just want to let you guys know that the only person who can determine what you're capable of is yourself and God. So stop listening to the outside influence. Stop listening to everything outside of your heart and your mind, because God's going to speak to your heart. He's going to speak to you, and he's going to give you every opportunity to grow and become successful. And you just need to look at yourself as knowing that you have the tools. When I was a kid, my dad bought a 1961 Massey Ferguson tractor. And during that time, we had to sand it down, and all he would let me use is sandpaper. And the moral of that story is that you have everything that you need right now to get the job done. I ended up getting that tractor sanded, selling it, and buying my first pickup truck in high school. I didn't use an electric sander. I wanted to, but my dad wouldn't let me. You have the tools needed to complete every job. So don't feel like you need everything that others have. Don't compare your life to others, because every time you compare yourself to someone else, you're going to fall short. Realize you have everything you need to get the job done.
Man, that's awesome. Well, normally I add on to the emptying the chamber, but I don't know if I've got anything to add to that. That's good stuff. Sam, thanks again. I really appreciate it. And we'll be in touch, and I'm going to be following your journey and see what all God's going to do through you in the coming years.
Absolutely, brother. I appreciate it. And I look forward to changing some lives together.
Yeah, absolutely, man. We'll catch you later.
Awesome.